Thank you for joining us for our November meeting of the Albany Democratic Club. I'm Aaron, I'm your president, and we are going to jump right into our main item, which we are lucky to have Supervisor Nikki Fortunato Bas, who is our supervisor on the Board of Supervisors for Alameda County and previously a city council member for Oakland, and has been on the Board of Supervisors since the last election. So we are excited to hear about what she's been working on, any issues she wants us in Albany to be aware of, and then have time for questions from the group about things that we can get involved in, things affecting Albany, anything like that. So, Nikki, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. And thank you, everyone, for making time to have me on. Um, I'll just start by saying it's been really great to get to know Albany. Eliza Cosme is also on, who's my staff person in her day job, and has connected with some of you. And so, just briefly, it was really lovely to see Erin and you're wearing your other hat as a HCD staff and also Vice Mayor McQuaid at the Verona Hill Affordable Housing Grant opening. That's a real milestone for Albany. Also appreciate you, Vice Mayor McQuaid, for connecting us with different organizations and events, including the recent annual Albany Education Fund Hall of Fame. And then, of course, I'm serving on ACTC, our Transportation Commission, with Councilmember Jordan. So it's nice to have a lot of connections. And then also working with Mayor Lopez on a few issues. We've got a meeting coming up together with him and the city manager. And I know one of the things he really cares about is immigration as well as food security. So we've had a chance to touch base on those things. So just wanted to start off by appreciating all of you for the ways you're connecting with my office, given that we're less than a year in. Um, I'll just jump right into a few of the things that we're doing. My approach to this particular role, given that the county is our social safety net, is to really push forward a vision to protect our most vulnerable residents, especially those who face the greatest barriers in fulfilling their basic needs. And you're already familiar with the county being the Democratic Club. You know that our main charge is providing health care as well as food assistance and homeless services. We also support Alameda Health System and our public hospitals. So, my priorities for this first year, as well as my first term, include homelessness solutions, healthcare access, childcare access, food security, fire safety. We're obviously operating under the Trump administration. And as we all know, the attacks on our communities has been absolutely relentless, from immigrants to taking away health care, jeopardizing food security, and now with some of the recent federal rulings, jeopardizing housing security as well, including for our unhoused neighbors. So, I wanted to run through a couple things that I've been working on. One primary thing is called the Alameda County Together for All Ad Hoc Committee. And so I got elected when Trump did, unfortunately, for him. And I served as a council member under the first Trump administration. So I knew a little bit about his playbook. And during the first Trump administration, the county had the leadership of the late supervisors, Richard Viane, Wilma Chan, and they formed an ad hoc committee to protect immigrant and refugees. And so, taking some of those lessons, I proposed and the board approved the creation of a committee called Alameda County Together for All. And I chair that committee. Supervisor Marquez is the vice chair. And our charge is really to look at the different federal policies and budgets that are impacting, again, our most vulnerable community members. And so we've heard from the immigrant and refugee community, the LGBTQ community. We've heard about healthcare access, food security, reproductive justice. And I'm really using that as a forum, not only to hear information, but to be very proactive in planning against how our communities are being attacked. And so in March, as well as very recently, we've been able to allocate $7.5 million to rebuild protections for immigrants and refugees. And so that includes rebuilding our rapid response hotline, community education, and legal services. Hopefully, you heard that we've also been able to champion food assistance. So, from recommendations that came out of our committee, we've been able to allocate $16.5 million towards food security. And this was really taking into account that the need for food is even greater than before the pandemic. It's great because of the cuts to CalFresh, also called SNAP, under the federal budget. And then when the government shut down, there was a real crisis with a delay of payments for CalFresh recipients. And so myself and others, we've been able to raise about $2 million in emergency funding to support not just the food bank, but also small to medium sized food justice organizations. And we'll be looking at healthcare as well. We've been able to allocate some funding to do a big enrollment push for those with so-called unsatisfactory immigration status. And we'll continue to look at how we can shore up our healthcare system. So that's some of the work that I'm doing under the purview of the committee that I chair, Act for All. We do have a meeting coming up next Thursday, and that particular meeting is going to look at food security more deeply. We're also going to look at the new ruling around public charge, as well as the new rules around HUD and housing funding. And hopefully, secondly, hopefully some of you have heard about the work that we've been doing around Measure W and the Home Together Fund, as well as the Essential Services Fund. So, as a brief refresher, Measure W is a 10-year half-cent general sales tax that was approved by voters in 2020, but was tied up in the courts. And so this year, we won the litigation. And a big priority of mine has been housing affordability as well as homelessness solutions. And so perhaps some of you joined the town halls that we had earlier this year. We had one in Oakland, one in Berkeley, and I've been really trying to engage more people in the work the county board is doing. But to cut the story short and cut to the chase, we were able to allocate $1.4 billion towards homelessness solutions to implement our Home Together plan, which is our countywide plan to address homelessness. I'm really proud of that because the voters were promised that we would make progress on homelessness with this tax. I advocated together with a great coalition of community organizations and residents, as well as our mayors, that 90% of the funds go towards homelessness, and the board landed on 80%. So that's where the $1.4 billion comes from. In addition to that, the balance of 20% of Measure W will go towards funding what we're calling our Essential County Services Fund. So that's about $258 million for our safety net, including healthcare, mental health prevention, immigrant rights, food security, senior services, and a host of other things. So we've made an initial allocation for this year, and we'll be working on a 5-year plan for the remainder of this particular federal administration and a couple years thereafter. In addition to Measure W, hopefully you've heard about Measure C. Measure C is a dedicated tax to support early childhood education and childcare, as well as children's health. And similarly, it was passed by voters, it was tied up in litigation, but we won that litigation this year. I'm serving on the first 5 commission, and we were really excited to move forward a 5-year plan to allocate $5 billion towards early childhood education. So that money is already hitting the ground with emergency grants and ongoing funding to support expanding access to early childcare, as well as expanding our pipeline of childcare jobs. And then I'll also just mention that I'm serving as the board's rep to the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments. That is a coalition between Alameda County and Contra Costa County, where we are working very proactively to do community education around fire prevention as well as fire response. And it's a really good opportunity to be proactive about how climate change is impacting our county, especially in the areas that are very fire prone. So that's very briefly a handful of the things that I'm working on. Again, just really working to prioritize our most vulnerable residents around affordable housing and homelessness solutions, access to healthcare, childcare, food security, and fire safety, to name a few. So I'll stop there and I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that rundown and for doing all that work. We had one question about backfilling food stamps in the chat, and bringing up the example of Contra Costa, which gave out debit cards. And I wonder if you can speak to that. And then others, if you want to put questions in the chat or raise your hands, we can go through folks online.
Sure. So, just stepping back, in terms of food security, the Act for All committee that I chair, we had a presentation from the food bank and a number of food justice organizations at the beginning of September. And from that meeting, they made a recommendation that was essentially to look at the impacts of HR1, the federal budget on SNAP and CalFresh. And essentially, there's up to 179,000 Alameda County residents who receive CalFresh, and there could be um, cuts of about 20% over a decade. Our staff is still looking at who might be at risk of losing their benefits because there's a lot of eligibility requirements and work requirements coming up. And in fact, District 5 has a very significant, possibly the largest number of residents who might be impacted by future work requirements. And the proposal from the food bank and its partners was that we take what we learned during COVID in terms of providing food and create an expanded food network. And Eliza is actually leading this work on my team and can speak much more eloquently about it. But essentially, they proposed um, a $20 million project that would allow the food hub to do much more procurement and to really have a deeper network around distribution, more and more delivery, because some folks, especially in the immigrant community, are not feeling as safe going out to pick up food and doing things like pop-ups. So that would continue to serve seniors, unhoused communities, immigrants, families, and children. And one of the things I advocated for was to fund that project with at least $10 million. And so there was an allocation of 6.5 million that I had pushed for previously. That was really to backfill some of the loss of ARPA federal funding, and then $10 million to help create this expanded food hub. Now, when the federal government shut down and there was a delay in SNAP benefits, I pushed for that $10 million, which the board ended up approving, and the food bank really used that funding as well as, or the promise of that funding and the promise of expediting some state funding to kick into gear more procurement and distribution. And in addition to that, we raised about $2 million so that small to medium size organizations could really help meet the need. And my office contributed 100,000 of that 2 million, and I personally fundraised a 500,000. I was really working towards having a similar model to San Francisco and Contra Costa, but our assessment was to be able to meet the need with gift cards or debit cards really quickly. We needed at least $5 million from private sources and a $5 million match to make 10 million. And we couldn't get to that fundraising goal very quickly, to be frank. And if you watch that work session, you'll also know that it was pretty hard to get the board to commit to the $10 million that I had that we got even before the government shutdown impacted SNAP. So that's what we were able to do. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop there. We're going to keep building out this network. And fortunately, the government has reopened payments for CalFresh have been hitting people's debit cards. And with the continuing resolution at the federal level, both SNAP, which we call CalFresh here, as well as WIC, which supports women with children. Those two sources of benefits are secure through this fiscal year. So that's definitely something that we're going to be monitoring. And I don't know if you want to hear more, I'll invite Aliza to share a little bit more. But my office is actually convening this food network, and we're really committed to continuing to champion and support food security.
Great. We had another question about what the board and yourself are doing to address climate change, especially in regards to transportation alternatives to individual motor vehicles.
Thank you for that question. It's a good question. I can't say that over the 10 months or so that I've been on the board, we've had a direct um, ability to impact climate change in terms of individual vehicles. Um, I'm just looking at the question right here. I definitely think that through the work that Preston and I do on ACTC, as well as work that we collectively do on development, there's opportunities to do this. Um, I'll just mention that one of the things that I did as a council member in regards to new development, especially housing, is work with developers around public transit. So there's a development that I advocated for that's 100% affordable near Lake Merritt, for example. And that development actually doesn't have any parking to encourage public transit. And we also secured a commitment from AC Transit to add a bus line that would serve that housing project. Um, so, as development happens in Albany or in my district, I'm definitely very interested in partnering with developers and coalitions and advocates around really incentivizing more public transit. And the county, like every other jurisdiction, also has an environmental, an environmental climate action plan. And so that's probably going to be an opportunity for us to really look at what we can do.
Great. Um, and we had a question about specifics on Measure W of, does that include rental assistance, something Albany's talked about doing? And if I could make it a little more broad of, what does the money that might be spent in or around Albany look like from Measure W?
That's a great question. So, Measure W is going to implement our Home Together plan, again, the county's homelessness action plan. And so that's a combination of prevention, interim housing, permanent supportive housing, and services. One of the things that the board has already done is approve um, a flexible spending pool of funds. It's about $10 million a year. That is largely to help prevent homelessness. So that's supportive of people who are currently unhoused, making, say, you know, their first month's rent, or otherwise helping to prevent them from being unhoused. Um, I am, like I said earlier, meeting with the mayor and the city manager. And so I am really interested in hearing how Albany wants to advocate for those funds. We've had a couple RFPs so far. One has been for interim shelter. We have a new RFP that is for permanent supportive housing, including new construction. And there's another RFP coming out in the beginning of the year that will be for acquisition and preservation. So, as I've been working with the five cities in my district, I have been spending time with mayors and administrators and really listening to hear what you would like to get funding. And, the way Measure W is structured, we are trying to invest in the places where homelessness occurs. And so the county is divided into 5 zones. Albany is considered North County together with um, Berkeley and Emeryville. And so that sort of region should be getting funding proportionate to the number of people who were unhoused there and also looking at racial equity. So definitely look forward to that meeting with Albany's city manager, as well as, any of you as advocates or council members in terms of how that money could really help address homelessness.
Great. Um, we had a question about, are there better ways to fund BART than a sales tax, which I think touches on the efforts right now to do a regional funding measure for transit. So I wonder if you could briefly discuss that and your thoughts there.
Sure. I mean, I'll personally say that I have been supportive of like a gross receipts tax, a more progressive tax to fund our transportation system. In the conversations that happened at the state level to move forward a transportation measure that wasn't, the route that folks decided on. But in general, I am much more supportive of progressive versus regressive taxes. And at the city of Oakland, while I was council president, I worked for many years actually revamping our business license tax from being a flat tax to one that is more tiered and progressive. Um, and I'll just stop there for now since I see there's more questions.
I wonder if you can answer Bob's question about any particular items that people in Albany should be watching or paying attention for.
Um, Great question. I will say that I try to use my social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky to share highlights from each board agenda before it comes up. So typically, over the weekend before our Monday or Tuesday committee and board meetings, I'll do a social media post to let people know what's happening. And at the board, we only have 3 days noticing, so our board agendas aren't published until typically, first thing in the morning, Friday. So definitely watch out for those. Um, Tomorrow we have a work session, so we're going to take up child welfare. Um, there was a state audit on child welfare and foster care, and we are laser focused on improving that system so that we can ensure the safety of our children and families. We are also going to be looking at our emergency medical response system, our ambulances. However, I know Albany has sort of an exclusive operating area, so you're not included in the county's ambulance contract. In my district, only Oakland and Emeryville are. So those are a couple things coming up.
Okay, great.
And certainly, as we look into that 5-year plan, you should probably watch out for our next budget process because not only will we be doing our 1-year budget, we're also going to look at a 5-year plan for that portion of Measure W for safety net services. And I did a virtual town hall earlier this year. I'll probably do some in-person town halls to engage folks around our budget when that process starts in the spring.
Great. We will, if you let us know what those dates are when you make those town halls, we'll happily send them out to our list.
That would be great.
Um, Next question, Peggy, is there any work being done about minimum wage increases at the county level?
Great question. I'm not aware of anything the county is doing on minimum wages. I was part of raising Oakland's minimum wage by ballot measure. I know that there's, ongoing efforts at the state as well as the federal level, although we can't count on the feds right now. Um, yeah, certainly if you hear of anything, let me know. For the most part, the county has jurisdiction on a range of things from like public works to tenant protections and other issues in the unincorporated cities versus the charter cities. And so keep me posted if you hear about things that I should know about.
Sounds good. Preston, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And thank you, Nikki, for attending tonight and for being my seatmate in the Alameda County Transportation Commission. Um, as you know, one of my issues is the how much the county is charging for elections. And you've received a letter on that. We've had a recent iteration with the ROV's office where they sent us the bill again and said Albany's the only one that hasn't paid. We gave a response. We started working with them over a year and a half ago to try to get explanations for why they charge what they charge, and those really haven't been forthcoming. And we've now gotten a letter back with a lot of misdirection and some misinformation, if not disinformation. So just so others know, the county's tripled its charges per registered voter since 2014. This was not due to the pandemic because the charge in 2020, 22, and 24 was the same. So triple, which is way beyond inflation. Some other relevant stats is for the ranked choice portion. So all cities pay that first charge for the ranked choice portion. The charge in 2022 was about double what it was in 2020. And in 2024, it was about half again as much as 2020. And then finally, Oakland and Berkeley implemented, well, the county finally implemented voting for 16 and 17-year-olds in the 2024 election. And in the ROV's written staff report to the supervisors in, I think, July, it estimated that the charge would be around $20 per registered voter of that age, and ended up charging $80. So four times what it stated just a few months before. And we've not gotten satisfactory explanations for any of this. So I'm concerned because he's retiring and that we're never getting an explanation. I'm opposed to paying these bills until we get an explanation, but this registrar is not great, as is broadly known at giving explanations. So I'm just curious your thoughts and engagement on this particular matter that's fundamental to our democracy.
Thanks for that, Preston. I've seen I've seen most of the letters that have gone back and forth, and I've, asked the registrar to communicate directly with you and the city of Albany. Um, I think there needs to be much more transparency. I've been pretty frustrated myself because the answer is typically, the rates are on our website, but there isn't, I don't believe that there's enough transparency in terms of the level of detail that's needed in terms of, staff time. I've also heard that it's really to help with the increasing costs of infrastructure, including, electronic equipment, security, et cetera. What you described is a pretty significant jump. And so, um, I think what I'll do with this latest round of communications is raise it again with the ROV and really ask that they communicate with more transparency and detail, um, to explain what the costs are. And I believe you've um, also heard this from our office as Eliza has been working with you. It's also a really important issue for the Election Commission to take up. I know they recently provided a report to the board. I don't think that election costs were covered to the extent that they should have been or could have been, um, especially with the costs increasing. So I think it's a good topic for them.
I'm worried in general. I'm particularly worried for 16 and 17-year-old voting because
Mhm.
it was implemented with only a month's notice before the start of the election. And so there was not as much registration as there will be next time. And, if there's 10,000 16 and 17-year-olds that are registered in in Oakland and is $80 a voter, that's going to be what, $800,000, and that I could see that torpedoing the movement in the area, if that information gets out. And understandably, I mean, that's pretty outrageous. So I appreciate your work on this and your attentiveness to this.
Definitely. And, I'll just say I've also raised it with the registrar because when I was at Oakland, even the city clerk wanted to have a better idea of what the cost would be because, as cities, we have to budget for each of our elections. And so just on the basis of budgeting, there's a lot more information that we need and, you need as a council member to understand what costs we will be incurring and how to account for that.
Yeah, and there's other like Santa Clara County gives cities, a customized estimate to each city of what's going to be cost, and it charges essentially per contest per measure. Um, Whereas we just sit and bite our nails and wait for what the invoice is going to be because we don't really have any upfront information like that. So
Mm. That's good
again,
to know. I know some staff in the Santa Clara County Administrator's Office. I'm working with them on immigration response, so I'll ask them a little bit more about what they do, and that will be a really good comparable for me as I follow up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think I understand. So the registrar's retiring. I think that if I understand the announcement in March. And has the board taken a decision whether it's going to split that position from the director of information technology for the county, or to have an election official that's focused only on elections, or is that decision yet to be taken?
Um, we have discussed this in closed session. I'm not at liberty yet to describe that, but I think that
You don't need to say
there's
anymore. I
overwhelming
understand.
public sentiment,
Yeah,
as well as I think I might have expressed before I entered office an interest in having two separate positions.
yeah.
I'll say that I'm very sympathetic to that, and I won't be the only one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for letting me take a bit of time on this topic.
No, we appreciate the discussion. Any other questions from anyone? If you want to raise your hand or put anything in the chat. I think that was all the ones we had in the chat. While people are thinking about it, I'll ask one of just, are there any ways that would be good for anyone here in the district to get involved, or any commissions that you have appointments on that people should keep an eye out for or submit an application for?
That is an excellent question. We have periodically shared board and commission vacancies. Supervisor Carson filled most of them before I came on. There's been a few vacancies, and we tend to share them in our newsletter. Um, so, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, which is on our website. And yeah, I think the main way to stay involved is, sign up for my newsletter on your on our website. I only send something out through the county's lists once a month, so it's not a lot of emails. Follow me on social media as well, because that's where, I preview what's coming up to the board. And for anyone who's serving as a volunteer member of one of our boards and commissions, we're doing a gathering with those members on the 18th of December. So we'll take another look at what openings we have and make sure we share that out in our newsletter. But certainly, if you're interested in serving, feel free to reach out to us. Aliza is um, our Director of Community Partnerships, and she works in Albany in particular, among some other cities. And so feel free to reach out to her.
Great. Social media handle the same on all platforms?
On Instagram and Facebook, I believe it's Supervisor Nikki Fortunato Bas. I should know that. And then on Blue Sky, it's a little bit different, but I'm not that hard to find.
Okay, great. Preston, you had another question about Measure W?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I'm wondering, can the funds, Measure W funds, and I don't know if they're allocated by city or I haven't followed it, but I'm wondering if they can be used to provide emergency rent support to people who do currently have a residence but are faced with an emergency financial situation so that they don't fall into homelessness.
Yeah, thanks. That
Um,
was basically what my question was. Thank you.
Oh, right on.
yeah, so right now, The main prevention source of funding that we have again is this flexible subsidy pool. And again, it's targeted for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. I believe Abode is the vendor for that. Um, I am a big supporter of other types of prevention, including supporting tenants as well. So that's not to say that it's not something Measure W will not support. We just haven't made all the funding allocations. So it's possible that we could do more in terms of that type of, rental assistance for more prevention. We just haven't allocated specifically for that yet. I know we have a contract with Central Legal. I also funded them when I was at the City of Oakland for, I think it's called, I can't remember.
AC Secure.
Thank you. Thank you. AC Secure. It's Oakland Secure in Oakland. So AC Secure is funded. And it probably would be good to get a report on what the need is to see if we need to do more funding through our next budget cycle or through Measure W. But
Brian?
I have been supportive of rental assistance as a prevention strategy.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just add a little context that Albany used some of its ARPA funding to stand up a program of this type,
Mm-hmm.
and has helped about 80 households so far. Aaron and I ran a measure to levy a tax on gross receipts, like other cities have done, from rental properties to keep this program going. The realtor spent $80,000 against it, which was like a vast record by a huge margin for campaigning in Albany. So it failed pretty hard. And but amazingly, our city manager has said that they're going to identify funds within the general fund to keep it going once ARPA runs out. But I'm still worried, and I think having some matching from designated source would make it more likely that we can sustain that program.
Okay, that's great to hear. I'd be interested in hearing more, hearing what the budget is and how I can help
Okay, great.
sustain that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, that was basically my follow-up question was, can the city, you mentioned like RFPs going out for parts of Measure W, and so it sounds like Measure W is like a big pot of money that the county can, like, maybe it doles it out to various programs. So could Albany basically apply, say that we have this program that we'd like to fund with Measure W to funds to pay for this for people who are not unhoused, but it's preventing them from being unhoused because they're having problems with their rent.
Yeah, we can share, we had a Measure W town hall. They've been happening in all 5 of our districts. Ours was last Monday. It's on the H&H website. I don't know if I can find it really quickly, and if not, I can share it with Aaron. Actually, you might even know where it is. But it's on the homeless and housing website, and there's a slide deck that has a little bit more background on how the funds are going to be used in line with the Home Together plan. But I do want to highlight again, the reason I'm talking with the mayor and the city manager, among other things, besides listening, is to hear how Albany would like to access Measure W funding. So I have a sense of what your goals are and can help advocate for them. So, rental assistance sounds like it's definitely one of them, and there could be other things that would be great to put on my radar. I want to make sure that as the RFPs go out, they're really tailored to the outcomes that we need in each of our cities and across the county to address homelessness, in line with prevention, intervention, and of course, permanent housing.
Okay, thanks.
Peggy?
Yeah, I was basically just going to jump in and repeat what everybody else has said, that I think for Albany, the idea of rental assistance is critical. And I'm glad to hear that you'll be working on that for us. And I think the more flexibility there can be, especially for the smaller cities whose needs maybe are different than, say, Oakland or Hayward, which are your district. But that's really important. The other thing I wanted to say from earlier, I'm our representative on the Housing Authority. And as you know, funds got a little tight there for a while. I just want you to know we appreciate what the county was doing and working with us. And as I look at what may or may not be coming forward, I just hope that we continue to develop that partnership between the county and the Housing Authority to maximize what funds we do have.
Absolutely.
Any last questions from anyone? Seeing none. Supervisor, thank you so much for joining us and answering all these questions. We really appreciate it, and the chance to hear about what the county is doing. As I said in our email, it's more than everyone thinks, so it's really good to
And you
hear
know it
about
very
this.
well. I'll just say that I enjoyed having this time, and if there's any ways that we can partner, please don't be shy about reaching out. I definitely will follow up with Preston about the ROV issue, and for those of you interested in rental assistance, please reach out to us and let us know who we can work directly with, because I think there's an opportunity both with Measure W as well as with our next budget cycle, especially given the context around housing and homelessness in Albany.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
So, with that, we will turn to our other item before we go to just updates from around town, as we usually end the meetings with. That is our item about our bylaw update. Hopefully this is familiar because we did talk about it at our last meeting, but I will share the link to those proposed amendments again. I believe this should be a viewing link. If it's not, please don't edit. These are bylaw changes, as we ran down last time, to really modernize our bylaws. They had a lot of holes in them that didn't really account for how we have to run the club these days, and dealing with unanticipated things like returning members, not defining what our officers really look like, and not taking account of things like voting when we have most of our meetings online. So the biggest change is probably looking at that and making sure that we can do voting easily in an online environment, as well as a lot of very small changes just to clean things up. So this is really modernizing our bylaws to make them really functional. And I appreciate all the officers who have gone back and forth about this for a couple months. So again, these were discussed and shared with the membership at our last meeting. So again, they should be hopefully familiar, and you will get a voting link for this. I think as soon as our meeting ends, when Brian sends it out, it should have a link to this as well.
Shortly thereafter, Gabi, did you get my mess? Oh, does Gabi? Yeah, I sent you a text and
Okay,
a
sorry.
chat that would help with the setting up the vote. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you guys for doing that. Amy?
Just wondering, I could have easily missed it, but I wasn't able to attend that last meeting, so I didn't see this. And I don't remember getting like a recording and information or minutes or any heads up that this happened. Uh, Did we get something? Because I don't remember getting it, and I could be
I
wrong.
believe our emails around it said we were discussing it and then said we had discussed it at that meeting. I'm
So
not
is
sure.
this Google Doc? Did we get the Google Doc before, or is this the first?
I can't remember if we sent out
Okay.
the link, but we
All right.
shared it at the meeting and I think gave people a chance to discuss it then.
Right, I'm saying people who weren't at the meeting, who couldn't go to
Right.
the meeting. Like, did we get?
I can't
Okay.
remember if we sent it out as a link or not.
Okay, probably a good idea.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yes, and it will be included in everyone's ballot. So thank you for Brian for making that happen. Unless there's any other questions about that, I know this is the most exciting stuff you can possibly do with your evening. So I appreciate everyone sitting through it. It's good to have these modernized, especially as we went through our chartering process recently, and it's good to, send our up-to-date minutes to the club, or the county party. That will end with our usual just stuff around town. If anyone is on any bodies or whatnot, so I will open the floor to anyone who has updates from any appointed bodies or city council or anything else.
I'll start with also with the bylaws, just some context first, which is that when Nick and Brian Beal and Jennifer Radix Johnson, I don't know who else, were the kind of got the club started, and some of us were some of the founding members, but they basically took some of them had been, I think Nick and Brian Beal had been going to the El Cerrito Democratic Club off and on, and they pretty much took their bylaws and did a search and replace for El Cerrito and Albany. I don't know what else, but and then over the years we've changed them a little bit here and there, but mostly kept them the same. So now with this post-pandemic, most things online kind of thing, it's good to see some of those updates going, but everybody's going on. But people should look at each thing, and it's going to be an all or nothing vote, and so look things over, and if it seems fine, then yes, and if not, then no. I am on the Parks Commission. We were one of the many meetings in the last few weeks, month or so, that were recently canceled. We probably we'll see about the December meeting, and um, some of our big business has kind of come and gone with um, the street tree plan, and so it was good to see that's being discussed in the city council now, and things are starting to happen with that. And uh, yeah, there's a lot of ongoing things and a lot of things that have already wrapped up. And um, uh, yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, who else has some city council members, planning and zoning?
I can offer some items. It's been a while since we met, so certainly can't cover everything, but maybe a couple of useful things is it went unmarked on the consent calendar, but the last fiscal year end unaudited financial results came in, and there was over a $2 million budgeted deficit. And to be clear, budgeted is like what is potentially anticipated to occur. What actually occurred was a bit less than $1 million of surplus. Now, again, this is unaudited. The audit is taking place now and will be completed this calendar year. We'll come to the council after that. So we'll see what it ends up being, but the city's in better financial shape than one would think from the budget, which has kind of been my experience year after year after year. The new finance director has taken steps to make it so that the budget will more closely match the actual financial results going forward. So there's qualitative change in that regard. I won't go into the details on that, but henceforth, presumably one can look at the budget and have a better feel, higher faith that that is actually what is likely to develop, where that has not been the case in the past. The council is considering a variety of revenue measures. Some would be measures for the general fund, which is there's revenue that can be spent on anything. Some are special specific measures, meaning to be spent on specific issues. The two general fund measures are a restructuring of the property transfer tax potentially to have it bracketed. So the first X dollars of sales gets taxed at a lower rate, and the next X dollar is a higher rate and a higher rate, like an income tax. At least that would be one possible structure. And the other one is restructuring the business license tax, which is currently per employee without regard to the amount of revenue per employee. So it'll be changing that to a revenue-based tax from an employee headcount-based tax. And then the other measure that council's discussed is a property tax, which property taxes are or parcel taxes or special taxes by law. And this would be to fund the city taking full responsibility for street trees, whose maintenance is currently shared. It's a little ambiguous, but legally shared with the adjacent property owner, and increasing the rate of street tree planting and the care of street trees, and then doing essentially the same for street lights. So it would fund replacement of all the failing luminaires or lamps, and then would also fund installation of streetlights where they're needed to increase intersection safety. So there's various financial things which I think are probably of key import. Who would like to go next? I don't know, since we were just on council, I don't know, Peggy, if you want to add anything to that, other highlights, since I focused on the financial, or there's other aspects.
I would add to your financial piece that we did pass the ESG investment policy. And Aaron, I think you get credit for that. You're the one that kicked it off several years ago. So we got it done. We have a study session Monday on basically information coming from the Housing Advisory Committee, so a lot on tenants' rights. That should be a good discussion.
Yeah, thanks on the ESG. Thanks, Peggy. I will add to that. I was amazed at how fast it actually had import. So the ESG policy called for selling investments when it was financially reasonable, so meaning not at a loss to do so, and essentially oil production, refining, aerospace and defense, and Peggy, I was the tobacco, and there was an industry that you brought up, tobacco and firearms. Albany was not holding any tobacco and firearms commercial paper, essentially business bonds. But I was holding aerospace and defense and various oil production companies, BP, Chevron, and amazing those sold within a month or two of the policy passing. So it was of actual import. Now, in terms of percentage of the portfolio, it was not a large percentage of the portfolio. It was single digit percent, under 5% in total. But it was consequential in that regard, and amazing how rapidly it all took place.
Nick, I saw you on mute earlier.
But I was curious, though, quick question for city council members is, you mentioned upcoming ballot measures. What's the timeline for the city to vote on adding something to the ballot? And are there any predictions as to whether or not something that would address Measure K development on Albany Hill would be part of that?
So to the first question, the measures are due to the registrar of voters generally around August 10th. It changes a little bit by a few days. So the last time for the council to vote a measure onto the ballot is its second meeting in July, unless it has a special meeting for the purpose. It doesn't often go that late, but it can go that late. Legally can go that late. Usually draft language, if the council provides direction, staff go ahead and prepare this measure, then a draft will come back sometime in the spring. Council will provide feedback, and then the final will come back typically in June or so. So that's kind of a rough calendar for you. In terms of Measure K, I have not seen any action on that. It's certainly on my list, and it is in the housing element as something that Albany is committed to doing, but I haven't heard it brought up by staff. I suspect it's going to be a 2028 measure rather than 2026 because it involves a specific plan. For people who don't know, there's What Brian is raising, if I understand the issue correctly, is there's a property that is just under 11 acres on Albany Hill that is undeveloped. It's the southern portion of the west facing part of the hill and the crest, which if you're on the crest, it just seems like part of Albany Park, but it's not. It's private property. And Albany decades ago passed a specific plan, which is a planning document that lays out like what could be developed there. And that plan needs to be changed pretty dramatically because it's what it requires is currently is pretty low density development and allows that development to go, I think, halfway up the slope on the hill. So it's out of date in terms of being economically viable. You know, it's not really possible for anybody to develop in that fashion at this point in time.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you have particular thoughts on it, Brian?
Um, yeah, just that it's something that I and others have advocated for a while, and just um, keep people and the city keeps talking about it needs to be revisited, and um, different election cycles come and go, and it hasn't been put on the ballot. So, uh, sounds like you're thinking the city might wait for a general election on that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking I doubt it's gonna be 2026. I mean,
Or
this
presidential
horrible.
presidential election.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so hey, I guess I'll jump in planning and zoning. So related to that, I had a meeting with our new community development director just to talk to her about all the things. And Dina, is that her name? Am I getting that right?
Mhm.
And forgetting her last name, but anyway, you're right. The Measure K revamping is in our housing element, and it's supposed to have been done. It's supposed to be on the ballot for 2026 or maybe even 2024. No, probably 2026. It won't be. She said it won't be on the ballot for 2026. There's another measure that's in our housing element that won't be on the ballot in 2026. And she stated that both of those things need more time to develop. I'll say that in general, the Planning and Zoning Commission has been suffering from too few meetings, as others have mentioned. We've been meeting every month instead of every 2 weeks like we used to in the heyday. And then sometimes even the monthly meeting gets canceled. So I think one of the reasons is there's not a lot of building going on because of the economics of building right now. But I'm also disappointed that we're not delving into the policy more than we are. And so we're not really being asked to do much policy work at all. And I would love to see more of that coming forward. It's interesting to hear about the Housing Advisory Committee, or the analog to planning and zoning, because I remember that starting out very slowly, but apparently it has picked up steam, and they are now giving input to the council. So I'm curious if anyone has any opinions about that work, or what they've done, or what's likely to come out of that, because I haven't really seen much.
I was waiting to go
That's it for my
last,
update.
but I'm the chair of the HAC. So we over the last year have looked at all the tenant protection programs that were in the housing element. Had a meeting on each one of those, and then had our two sort of summary meetings to go over the things that are going to be sent to council, I think in January. So those are heading to council and include, a summary of all the things that the commission discussed as a whole, as well. There's the listening session that Peggy mentioned. So it's a lot of different things. It's possibility of just cause, of rent stabilization, of tenant legal assistance, of other assistance programs. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but we've gone over all those this year, and then we will reconvene next year after the council gives firm direction. Other news, I'm also the chair of the school board's Citizen Bond Oversight Commission, and we have vacancies on there. So if you know people who would be a good fit for those and who would like to join, it's a very easy role. I promise the meetings aren't too long. So if you know people, especially who are part of business organizations or who are seniors, I think we have we may have appointed the senior one, but we have at-large ones and we have business association ones. So we want people to get involved. And I think
Well, that might explain because you sent link to a flyer about it to me, and it said the senior association representative seat was vacant, but maybe it's been filled now. Because I had somebody who I might ask or might recommend.
We still have a bunch of at-large positions, so they should still
Okay.
apply. And
Okay.
I think
Okay.
we have somebody who applied for that and will probably be appointed by the school board at their next meeting. But
Okay.
yeah, we've
Okay.
got plenty of positions going. So
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and ask her then if she's interested.
yeah, please do.
Thanks.
So Aaron, would you say the HAC has been focused mostly on kind of tenant protections or tenants' rights versus and
That is the
property
only
owners'
thing in our
responsibility?
purview.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It has nothing, but I thought you had something to do with the housing element as well.
That is part of the tenant protection stuff is part of the housing element. The HAC's purview does not include stuff about housing production or like zoning.
Mm.
It is.
Don't you have something to do with the housing providers' rights and things like that too, right? I mean, the other half?
I mean, as it relates to, yeah, the tenant protections that were proposed in the housing element.
Okay, so yeah, it's not just one-sided, but it's
Well,
that
you keep
that
just
whole
saying tenant
aspect.
protection, so it seems like it
Yeah,
is kind of one-sided.
right.
I mean, that's how I would characterize what we're looking at. All of those have parts of how they affect landlords. But the motivating factor of most of them is protecting tenants.
I'll offer that housing element does not have policy goals to be assessed related to protecting rental providers. So the Housing Advisory Commission's charge is to pursue what is in the housing element with regard to rented residences, and the only policies that are in the housing element in that regard to be assessed are tenant protection policies. So it goes back to what was adopted in as the housing element.
So the people who own the properties have no protections. Okay, got it, thanks. All right.
And then Nick shared in the chat that there's a vacancy on planning and zoning. So,
Elizabeth Waddy resigned? Ugh,
Indeed,
loss.
yeah.
She's
she's
I mean, she was there forever, which was great. I mean, grateful to her for doing that. Do you know why she resigned? Just like has been there for 10 years and had enough or
yeah, no idea because she didn't share anything to the commission, so
yeah.
And I don't really know her personally.
one
Yeah,
thing I was
her expertise is
Yeah.
will be missed. Kara Volcic was
Vujicic.
Vujicic was has been her name has been surfaced as someone who might be good.
Glad to hear there's possibilities, but sad to see Elizabeth go. That was good expertise. One of our good having a lot of experts who live in Albany moments. All right, I think that's it for tonight. So thank you all. Look out for a voting link for the bylaws in your inbox. Thank you, Brian and Gabby, for setting that up, and thank you all for joining us.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you, President.
Mhm.